Hey everybody, welcome to Past the True Crime Joint. I'm your host, and thank you for tuning in to another episode. If it's your first time with us, hey, welcome to the session. I hope everybody's having a great week, and thank you again for tuning in. So today is Memorial Day for me as I'm recording. As you can see, it's really quiet in my house. So happy Memorial Day, everybody, and I hope everybody's out there being safe and also enjoying their day off. I had to go into work, but it was kind of light, so I'm not going to complain. But without further ado, let's hop right into this week's current event. This week's current event is something that's a little bit older, and I wanted to talk about it a couple weeks ago, but it was right after the school shooting, and I wanted to talk about that. So I felt like we still should talk about this. In Forney, Texas has got a lot going on, okay? They have a lot going on. But in Forney, Texas, a Ring doorbell captures a little boy going up to a house, the Nash's house, and he's banging on their door. The only thing is he has a whip in his hand, like a whip, something that you whip cattle with, or, you know, as African Americans, something that was used to, you know, punish us, whatever. So he's beating on the door with the whip. And the mother opens the door, the Nash mother, and she like, boy, you better get your ass off my porch before I call the police. And she, once again, she was nicer than me, just like most people on my podcast, because I would have probably snatched his whole shirt up off his back. But I digress. Let me take this what my anger management is for. Anywho, so she opens the door. She tells him to get off the porch. He leaves. Now, when her husband gets home, he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to go and talk to his parents. They get over to the little boy's house and they're trying to talk to his father. They're trying to actually show him the footage on the phone. And the father is very defensive, very upset, telling them to get off his porch. And then he goes and he gets his gun. So the arguments gets heated or whatever the case is. And the gun is accidentally discharged. But this guy almost shoots his own daughter. So you can already see this little boy has not cut from smart cloth already. It's, but the father was later arrested for deadly conduct. I don't know how that works, but I know in Texas, I think it's stand your ground. If anybody knows, let me know in the comments. But yeah, that shit's crazy. I don't know. The Nash family did exactly what they were supposed to do. They got away from the situation. They called the police. They recorded it all times, so no one could ever say that they did anything in the situation that was wrong. And like I said, they handled it great. The only bad thing is, as Black people in America, we have to take the next step, you know, to cover yourself to make sure you're protected. Because if it happened his word against that white neighbor's, who knows what could have happened if they didn't have any footage. So yeah, that's deep. Actually, they're going to court on this. He did make bail, but they're going to go to court, and I'm going to keep up with this. I have this notified in my little notification little things for my channel 8. So I'm going to make sure I keep up with this because I want to know what happens to the father. But let's get into this week's episode. We're going to just hop right on into this week's episode because this week's episode is good. And it's, you know, it's a little bit lighter than the ones that we've been doing. I felt like we needed to kind of lighten it up. The last 2 episodes have been a little... But before we get started, you guys know we got to hit our disclaimer. So, I mean, no harm and disrespect when telling these stories. It's something I just love to do. And I really think I'm good at it. And you guys seem to think I'm good at it too because you guys are listening. So, thank you. And I mean no harm or disrespect. So if I mishandle or upset anyone, I do apologize before I start because that was not my intentions. But if you have any thoughts or opinions, or you just want to show me some love, which I really would appreciate, couldn't even get that out because that's how much I would appreciate it. So if you guys head over to the Instagram at Past the True Crime Joint or head over to the Facebook at Past the True Crime Podcast, we now have a YouTube that is up and running and it is just not getting any views. And you guys are listening on Spotify, you know, and I appreciate that. But head over to the YouTube, you know, like, subscribe, you know, I don't really know how the YouTubers say it. They always be like, subscribe, share it. You know, that whole little thing that the YouTubers do. I don't know, I'm not a YouTuber. But anyway, go over to YouTube and do all that good jazz so it'll pop up in the algorithm so other people can enjoy. So, yeah, you know, I don't ask for much, but if you could do that, can you help me out? Even if you, like I said, you don't like something I said and you want to head over there and you just kind of want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. I'm open for all discussion. But without further ado, let's hop into this week's session. So everybody gather around, get your lighters, get your blunts, get your bongs, your cigarettes, whatever it is that makes you relax, even if it's your pillow, you grab that and let's get comfy because we're going to jump right into this story. Andrew Carter Thornton, aka Drew, is what we're going to call him for the rest of it because it's easier, and that's what his name was born October 30th, 1944. He was born in Kentucky. There's like two places it was referenced, so we're just going to say he was born in Kentucky. He was born to a Carter and a Peggy Thornton. Now, Carter and Peggy were very wealthy because they owned a horse breeding farm. And this was like a very high-end, farm. Not to mention, in the documentary I watched, it said that, the guy said that the Thornton family had a hand in most horse breeding that went on in that state and states around there. So that's a pretty big deal. And that allowed them the stability to be able to get their kids the finer things in life. Drew and his brother and his sister, they were pretty privileged kids. These kids went to private elementary schools. They were in debutantes. Like, these kids were, upper wealthy kids. They were. But Drew was a pretty laid back kid. He didn't really care too much about the money. He was really militant, and he was also described to being a daredevil. He liked to push things to the max. So when he was 14, his dad decided to send him to Sweeney Military Academy. Now, it's not a military school. This is like a very prestigious boys' school that politicians and judges and lawyers and, like important peoples send their sons to this school to be educated. And when he gets there, he immediately befriends his friend Bradley Bryant. Now, Bradley's grandpa used to be the mayor. So that'll tell you, the type of kids that went to this school. But unlike Drew, Bradley's family wasn't rich. They did start off that way, I guess, when the grandpa was, in office or whatever the case is. But somewhere down the line, the money was mishandled. I don't know, check the butler. But somewhere down the road, the money was mishandled and they were broke. So not broken, not too broke because he was able to go to the school, but they didn't have the money that Drew and his parents had. But that didn't stop them. These two were two peas in a pod, and they went the whole 4 years, arm in arm. You didn't see one without the other. Now, they graduated in 1962, and Drew immediately enrolled in the University of Kentucky. Now, Kentucky is what I said. I don't know what. Maybe I need to drink some water here. Let me take a break and drink some water. Now, when he gets to this school, he does not excel. And he doesn't do bad. He's just not, it's just boring for him. So he drops out after the first semester and he decides to go and check into the Army or enlist in the Army. So he's like, I'm in the Army, this is what I want to do. I need something exciting. So he decides to be an Army paratrooper. And those are the people who used to jump out of the plane and kind of come and they would either rescue or come with supplies or whatever, like stop uprisings and things like that. Like, that's what, the paratroopers would do. And that's something, that's living on the wild side. So he really enjoyed this. One of his Army platoon crew members or brothers or whatever, they described him as a thrill seeker, a daredevil. He said that the mark to pull your parachute would be about 2,000 miles or whatever. I don't know how that worked, but it would be 2,000. And he would always go under that before he would deploy his parachute. So that'll give you an idea. He also says, and this is a direct quote from what he said. He says, "Two friends, Thornton was a man of loyalty, religious conviction, enchanting charm, keen intelligence, and supreme self-confidence. But to enemies, he was ruthless, egotistic, immoral, driven by an ego so fragile he was overcompensating by macho ness, I guess. I don't the little it says macho buttons like that, so I'm gonna say like macho ness, or maybe like the quote ended. I don't know. But yeah, so this is what's said about him. Like, this is how somebody who was really close to him described him. And that's kind of freaky, and I guess I would definitely want to stay on his good side because, he seemed like he was not one to play around with. But unfortunately, Drew would be wounded in the Dominican Republic while his platoon was sent to stop an uprising. So in 1965, he's back home. He has a Purple Heart, but he's bored again. He's working on the farm with his dad, training racehorses. He's checked himself back in school. But, for Drew, this is not, he needs some type of action. He needs something, So he's like, I need to do something. So his friend Bradley, who is back from the Navy by chance. Now, when Bradley was in the Navy, he didn't see any action. So he's really bored. So they're kind of talking back and forth, and they're thinking about joining the police academy. And in this time, he meets a Betty Zaring. I hope I'm saying her name right. She's a fellow student at the University of Kentucky with him. And she says, end quote, that she fell in love with him because he was her romantic hero. Don't know what that means, but she was smitten and she loved her some him, I'm guessing. And the two were married July 1968. So now that Drew's married, he really is like, I need to figure something out because this everyday life is not working for me. But I love her. I want to try to make this work. I need some action at work. So he decides to go ahead and join the police department. And not only did he join the police department, but he applied, one of the first people to apply for the narcotics division. And this is the 60s, 1968 to be exact. And this is when the war on drugs has just taken off and the streets are flooded with heroin and cocaine and just the streets are flooded with drugs. So what perfect place for a adrenaline junkie to join is the narcotics. So he's on the team. He's helping them recruit new people, get a part of this. And one of the people that joins the team is a Henry Vance. Now, Henry Vance is not who you would have expected to have joined the narcotic division or even be friends with Drew. He was not, he was timid. He actually, the Vance family was one of the oldest families in Lexington, Kentucky. And they were one of the richest ones too. So they got that old money, but these weren't like stuck up people. They went to church every Sunday. They fed the homeless. Like, these were genuinely nice people. So I know you're probably wondering how Vance got roped into being a narcotic cop, especially a narcotic cop who's super, super close to Drew. Well, it all started in law school in 1969. And word on the curb, he just was not getting law school. It was not working out for him. And he also had just got married. So he's in law school, he just got married, and he decides it's not for him. And there is two different accounts. One account is he dropped out. The other account is he got kicked out. We're going to go with the juicy one is he got kicked out because that just sounds better for me. But so he's kicked out of school. He goes to his dad. His dad calls him a couple favors. You got to realize these are some pretty prestigious people. They have money. So the dad calls him a favor and it gets him a job at the police department. Now, when he gets to the police department, that's where Drew comes in, and I guess they strike up a conversation or a friendship or whatever the hell they strike up, but he decides to join the narcotics team. And now that Henry and Andrew are both on this narcotics team, they are feeling themselves, okay? They are kicking down doors. They are bringing people to justice, but I guess it's still not enough for for Drew. So Drew decides, all right, well, I'm going to take it up a notch and I'm going to start to steal this weed and cocaine that I take from these drug dealers and I'm gonna sell it back to them. So that's what he does. So now Drew is in these streets and he's in these streets and he didn't drag Henry with him. So, well, I don't know if he drug him with him, but judging by the person that Henry was, I think that he was coerced. Or he was talked in, I don't know, because he was rich already. Like, he comes from money, like, but he he didn't strike me as a person. I don't really know him. I've never met the man in my life, but, from the little interview I seen, he didn't strike me as the brains of this operation. But anyway, back to the story. So Drew and Betty are on the rocks at this point because Betty's like, she's seeing the change in him. At first he was genuinely excited, but now this excitement is turning into something else and it's actually scaring her. But she's trying to be there for him and make this work because she genuinely loved this man. But once she found out that some hitman in Chicago, I believe, had a hit out for Drew, she was like, look, it's not worth my life at this point. Like, whatever you got going, I can't do this. And I can't watch you self-destruct. That's something that I did see in quotes, which I really can understand, talking about me for a second, but I was in a relationship like that, with somebody who I was watching self-destruct, and I knew that I loved that person, but I could not stand by, but it was nothing I could do. It's nothing I can do to save him because he doesn't think he has a problem. All I can do is, get myself out of the situation to save my sanity and my peace. And that's what Betty did. In the year of 1970, they were divorced. But Betty says that was always the love of her life, and he always made sure she had everything she needed. Neither of them never married again. And when you kind of read that article and you read between the lines, and Betty had a lot to say, it seemed like they were still, allegedly, they were still knocking in boots or something, because she talks very highly of him. And even when she talks about the things he did, she doesn't downplay them. She just lets it be known he was really scarred from the war. Now, I think, I'm gonna leave my opinions to the end of this episode. This one is good, so I'm gonna leave this one to the end. But I got a theory, and I got a theory that's like wingled. It's like weaved into some things. Ooh, y'all, I got some. Look, we talking it. But back to Drew on the police department. So him and Betty's divorced. He's now, on his own, but he's having the time of his life. This is like the Wild Wild West. In the documentary, it states this was the beginning of the war on drugs. So there's not a lot of rules. So these cops are being able to get away with just about anything they want to in slapping, a gun charge or a drug, possession charge on you. So, and anybody, I wasn't in the 60s, but I heard a lot about it. Anybody who knows anything about it, they know police was gangsters. And Drew and Van. Now, okay. Henry's name is not Henry Van. It's Henry Vance. Sorry. But speaking of Mr. Henry Vance, Henry was fired from the police department in 1973 because he was caught forging the sheriff's signatures trying to buy 25 revolvers. So after this, he still lands a pretty good job, even though he probably shouldn't have, because he was accused of forging the sheriff's signature. So that's pretty deep. But not only does he wind up with another job, but he winds up at the state legislative office working for the governor. And with this, now he has to kind of distance himself from his friends, publicly, of course, but he's like, I'm the eyes and ears here. I hear everything. I know what's going on over here. So I'm going to just stay over here, out of the way. Now, What is Bradley doing, you ask? Well, I will tell you what Bradley is doing. Bradley, at this point in time, has just moved to Philly. When he moved to Philly, he meets a businessman, a multi-millionaire businessman at that, and he goes into business with him. I don't know exactly what into business they were doing, but they go into business together. He also gets married, and his wife has really strong ties to a lot of people in Vegas. So now that he's back and forth from Vegas to Philly, he's actually starting to meet a lot of connections. Drug dealer, mob men, people who were up there. And he's like, okay, I know a guy who could probably help y'all move some of your product, hint, hint, from one place to another. So he goes to Drew and he's like, hey, I have some people who need your transportation services. And him and Drew decided in 1975 that they're going to come up with this company called the Executive Productions. Now, the Executive Productions, aka the company, that was their nickname for it. And I like the company better, so that's what we're calling it. So they create the company. The company is a private security company that provides bodyguards for the elite people in Vegas. Like anybody who had the funds to be able to afford these bodyguards, they provided them for them. But this really was a front for smuggling guns and drugs. This is really what this is for. So these men are doing their thing. I mean, they are selling marijuana. They moving it through the country like it is going out of style. These men are just doing the most. So the company, the three heads of the company are put together. We have Henry Vance, who is the big shot at the state capitol. He's the eyes and ears. He's seeing everything. He's making sure that the company stays safe. Then we have Bradley. Bradley is the businessman. He's the face of the company. He's out here getting these contracts, getting these deals with these guys, figuring out where they're going to go, what they're going to do. And we have Drew, who's the transportation. You tell him where to be, when to be there, and he gets what he needs to get when he needs to get it. He preferred to fly at night. He would get to the designated area. He would pick it up. He would bring it back to Lexington. They would, offload everything and at the airport, and they would, sell it off there. And this is way before 9/11. So they were able to do all this undetected. Like as long as they were in the flight plan, it didn't matter what they were unloading or whatever the case is. There was really nobody there to kind of check on them and see what was going on. January 1977, Drew decides that it's time for him to resign from the police department. He's probably tired of doing both. And remember, he's an adrenaline junkie. So the police department is probably not doing it for him anymore because he's the one causing all the damn crime. So now being a drug dealer is probably doing it for him because he's flying on a weekly basis. He's picking up tons of, marijuana. He's bringing it back. He's making money, and this is probably a rush every time he does so. So he's like, forget that police department. I'm doing this. Henry decides to do the complete opposite. He decides to stay at the state capitol, because he's moving up. He actually just became the administrative assistant to the governor. So he's like, you know what? It's better for me to stay where I'm at. But with me staying here, I have to distance myself from both of you guys because the rumors are going around, bouncing off the wall. And one particular rumor that's really bothering Henry, and it's like, I can't get with this. Even if this is something you did, we can't be around each other because they can associate me with this, was the murder of a Melanie Flan. Melanie was a girlfriend of one of Drew's employees, and she had been in their circle quite a bit. She, probably went everywhere her boyfriend went, whatever the case is, but she knew a lot about the operation. And one day on her way home from the office, she literally disappeared. No trace, no car, no body, no nothing, no postcard, no phone, nothing. She disappeared off the face of the earth. So nobody, no crime, of course. They can't charge him or anything, but they know like something had to be up. And this girl, was last seen hanging out with all of y'all before. Well, was last seen going to work, but her last social setting was out with all of them. So it was really, really weird. In mid 1978, Bradley decides, you know what? Look. We doing all of this, but we doing all this for weed. If we gonna be doing all this, we need to step this up. We need to make this worth it. So Bradley links up with two notorious kingpins, Lee and Jimmy Carrigo, whatever. They brothers. And the problem with these two brothers, with Lee and Jimmy, is They're under investigation right now, and Drew knows this. Drew knows because of Henry. He knows, hey, they're looking at those two brothers. But Bradley, like, it doesn't really matter if they're looking at them or not. We have the inside, we have everything. We don't really, it doesn't matter. We can make anything go away. So, why would you be worried about it? And on November 24th, 1978, a gunman would open fire on a James Keir and nearly killing them. Now, you're probably asking me who James Keir is. James Keir is a prosecutor who's investigating the two brothers. And when Drew hears about this, he's like, bruh, I don't feel comfortable with doing this. You feel me? Look at this stuff, the trail of blood that these, brothers leave behind them. But somehow, Bradley talks Drew into it, so he's like, all right, cool. But then, less than a month later, one of the brothers, Lee, would be shot and killed by an unknown attacker. So once again, Drew is like, I'm not feeling this, death follows these people. Do you think that this is something that we need to be participating in? Like, I don't think so. But once again, Bradley convinces Drew some type of way or some type of... It had to be the flying or something. I have no idea what it was, but he said something to him, and Drew's back on board again. And on January 10th, 1979, Drew flies over to the jungles of South America. He picks up 10 tons of marijuana, which is estimated to be about $2 million. And in two separate articles, it says 10 tons in the documentary. So it must have really been 10 tons. That is a lot of freaking marijuana. Sheesh. But Drew gets back. They unload it. And everything goes off without a hitch. I don't know why Drew does what he does next. I don't know if he's being petty. I don't know what it was, but he abandons the plane in Louisville, and it's quickly discovered. And when it's discovered, they, trace the plane back to a Bradley Bryant. So Bradley, I'm pretty sure, is upset about this plane being, traced back to him. But the state police turn this over to the DEA. Now, once they turn this over to the DEA, nothing happens. Nothing. There's no arrest made. There's no follow-up. There's no nothing. And the state police are super irritated because they've actually done a little bit of investigating on their own on the company and the things that the company does. But every time they start, a Harold Brown, which is the head of the DEA, will stop them in their tracks. And his excuse for this particular incident, why they found a little bit of weed residue on that plane, was Drew was a DEA informant. And he was working with him trying to catch a notorious drug dealer. And to put the nail in the coffin, a month later, Jimmy was arrested. So he is livid. But Bradley somehow convinces him that this was something that had to be done. And he, it wasn't personal and like that. We just needed a face to go with this because we told the state police, that he was an informant and we don't need this to come back around on us. And then they come and mess up, blow up Drew's whole operation because that's the transportation and that's the most important part. A month after the plane is discovered, and Jimmy's arrested and charged with, what was the charge with? Drug trafficking? Drug smuggling. On the day of Jimmy's court date, the judge presiding over the case is shot in the head as he's walking into the courtroom. So at this point, Drew is over it. He doesn't want to do this anymore. He meets up with Bradley and he's like, I don't want to work with them. Bradley's like, okay, that's fine. I don't want to work with them either, but I don't want to stop doing this. I think we should take over their whole operation. And Drew's like, no. Now you're doing too much. We need to end whatever business relationship that we're about to have because I'm about to hit you. And the conversation reportedly got, heated, but how can anybody report this? Nobody was there. So whatever. I'm going to speculate it got heated because I would have been mad too. So Bradley immediately gets to work trying to find somebody to replace Drew, and he goes to his cousin. His cousin works at a military base in California in China Lake. And he has a very high security clearance. So he's like, okay, cool, don't even trip. So his cousin actually starts to steal a lot of the supplies, from ammo to night vision to vests to a lot of different guns. And Bradley takes all of this stuff and he puts some of it in a warehouse that he has for later. And the other half, he flies to Colombia and he trades for cocaine, which he flies back and they figure it all out. Now, he no longer has Henry and Drew anymore. So now he's doing everything by himself. And he's a hothead. So he needed Drew and Henry to kind of center him because not only is he a hothead, but he's sloppy. And this would come to play January of 1980 when a hotel maid smelled weed in a Philadelphia hotel room. So this is the 80s and this is not the 2000s, or the 2022 or whatever the case, whatever year it is. Y'all know what it is. But it was not okay to smoke weed just anywhere you wanted in the 80s. So when the police got there, though, they just assumed that they were going to be walking into a room with a bunch of kids or a party or something. They was going to, write a ticket or whatever the case is. But they had no idea what they would walk into. The police first found a ledger full of names and phone numbers and all type of random stuff. Then they found a phone scrambler. Then they found $25,000 in cash, semi-automatic weapons, more than one, but also a lease to a warehouse in Lexington. So the investigators determined, okay, well, this is probably not just somebody smoking weed. We probably should do a little bit more investigation. They found out the room was registered to a Bradley Bryant, and they actually stopped him from boarding the airplane. He was on his way to ATL before they stopped him and was like, nope, you will be coming with us. So he's arrested, and not only is he arrested, but the Philadelphia Police Department turned over his lease to the Lexington State Police Department because they're like, look, it's something in that warehouse. And, we don't have jurisdiction to just go up in there, but y'all definitely do. So maybe y'all should go. And that's exactly what they did. And when they raided it, they found damn near $250,000 worth of stolen guns, from ammo, like I said, guns, night vision, bulletproof vests. These men had it all. And oh my goodness, it was looking like Bradley was going down, him and his cousin. But nope. Bradley was arrested for possession of unregistered weapons and released on a $50,000 bail. He then went to court and went through a 3-week trial where he was found not guilty. Yes. This was in Philly, though. This is what happened in Philly. Maybe it's because the weed, I don't know. And I read this funny thing on Reddit. It was like, I read everywhere they said that he should have tipped the the maid more. But actually, if you read one of the articles, he had actually been tipping them a lot not to say anything. She just finked on him anyway. So, Well, Bradley deserved it. I don't know, but Bradley was a little asshole. I never met him, but just what I was reading. But he should have just sat down. He should have just left it alone. He wasn't poor. He wasn't, he had enough, but apparently he didn't. Because May of 1981, Bradley would be trying to sell 800 pounds of weed to an undercover DEA agent in Illinois. And once arrested in Illinois, he is then transferred over to California, but the California Army, because he still has to face the charges for the possession of the stolen firearms in California for him and his cousin stealing them off the base. So, he got away with it in Lexington, but that was just in Lexington because that was, where he supposedly were bringing them. They also throw a conspiracy to distribute weed. So there's that. And once in California, it's not the Lenexa police. Now they're actually investigating and they're doing a deep dive into this man's friends, enemies, and all that. And once they get down to the bottom of it, they're like, okay, cool. Bradley, you don't want to talk. You don't want to tell us anything. That's fine. He is sentenced to 15 years in prison. So now, like I said, they were investigating his friends, and guess which friend that they were investigating the most? If you guessed Drew, you guessed it right. And soon he would be indicted for conspiracy to import marijuana and to distribute and import marijuana. I was going to know it was 2 charges. And Drew was hot. He was mad because he already told Bradley, like, you gonna be the downfall of all of this because you just want to do everything you want to do. So he's mad. He decides, all right, I'm going on the run. I don't want no part of this, and I don't want to have to tell nobody. So in the summer of 1981, Drew disappears. He just hops in his plane one day and just literally disappears. And this is the 80s once again. So these are things that you can do. Don't try to commit a crime today and just disappear, because I highly doubt it's going to work out like that. But the police are looking for him, but they really not worried because there's still a whole bunch of other people a part of this company that they want to know a little bit more about. And y'all know Henry, Mr. State Legislator, personal assistant, whatever he was, he is over there probably shitting bricks because he has tried to distance himself from everybody in this company, and everybody's being slowly but surely arrested. And another employee that is being arrested is a Michael Kelly. And Michael Kelly has known these men since they were all kids. He's worked for the company. He's helped offload. He's helped import. He's helped do a little bit of everything. They really truly know him. So when he's arrested, Henry is spooked. He's like, what can this man say? So Henry decides that he's going to go to Mike's wife and I don't even know, I guess enlist her into helping, because at that point, I want to say she didn't know anything, but she had to know something because she was willing. Willing to do what? Well, willing to kill the prosecutor who was over the case, Eugene Berry. And I guess he figured if it was no prosecutor, no case, period, it was good, whatever. He got her a gun, the address. He got her an alibi. He got her a disguise. He got her a car. He got her everything that she needed to commit this murder. Now, what I would have asked him is why you can't do it since you got all of these resources. But, that was her. And one evening, Bonnie drove to Eugene's house, knocked on the door. When he opened the door, she shot him. Now, when she leaves the scene, she calls Henry, tells him it's done, and she throws the gun in a canal. Some like water, whatever, canal. And it's done and over with. Henry feels like he has just gotten away with the most perfect murder. Nobody's even paying attention, but they are. And the DA actually is really on this because this was a fellow member of the team that just died. So now we got to get to the bottom of this. So when they get to the bottom of it, they're like, well, who could really want him dead? They think about Mike. Now, Mike is in jail, but what about his wife? Let's kind of look into his wife. They corner her, and on April 12th, 1982, Bonnie is arrested and charged with murder. She is interrogated, but she never, ever, ever, ever says anything about the company, anything about her husband, anything about Henry. She never says anything. She down. She keeps all the secrets, and she is sentenced to life in prison, where she served her time. Well, for now. And I hope y'all did not forget about Drew in these last 6 months. He was on the run doing his best life. But in January 1982, a custom agent would hear him on the radio and inform the police. And they would be waiting for him at the North Carolina airstrip where he was there fueling his plane. So Drew stands trial for conspiracy to import and distribute marijuana. And he is convicted, but he is only sentenced to 6 months in a local federal prison. And out of the 6 months, he only serves 5. And it might be like, oh, but I mean, for him to be distributing as much cocaine as he was, not cocaine, weed. For him to be distributing as much weed as he was, and him to only receive 180 days in jail, and for in federal prison, and then for him to only serve 150 of those days, it's crazy. That's crazy. But whatever. He gets out, and when he gets out, everybody's thinking that he's cleaned up his act because he's really not doing anything. He's, flying under the radar. But that's really not the case. Actually, he made a few connections when he was in jail, and one of the connections was the Colombian cartel. And when he hooked up with them, he let them know, I can fly, I do this, I do that, and I can be your transportation, and I have so many connects, and I have this, and I have that. So he immediately starts to transport cocaine back and forth from Colombia to the United States. And supposedly, the local police didn't know anything about this, but whatever. The FBI would soon be tipped off to a tip from an informant, and the informant would let them know, he is smuggling drugs. On September 11th, 1985, Drew was on a normal trip. He was on his way back from Colombia, and he had 200 pounds of cocaine in the aircraft with him. That equaled to about $37 million worth of drugs. So, that's a lot of drugs. And something triggered him. Nobody knows what tipped him off, triggered him, but he just got the feeling that the police or the FBI was tracking him. And he was right. He was actually right. So he puts the plane on airplane mode, or I said airplane mode, autopilot. He puts the plane on autopilot, and he goes to the back of the plane, and he starts throwing duffel bags out the back. Boop, 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 boop. And he gets down to the last duffel bag. And when he gets down to this last duffel bag, he like, you know what? I'm going to keep this one. So he snaps it around his waist. He grabs a parachute, puts it on his back, and this man jumps off the airplane. Now, this is something that Drew has done a million times before. So nobody would have thought that this would be a problem. He's done this a million times, but apparently there was a problem, an issue somewhere, and his body was found in a Knoxville, Tennessee driveway. And he had an estimated amount of about $15 million in coke, $4,500 in cash, some gold coins, some knives, and 2 guns. Whew. And nobody really knows what happened because his parachute wasn't deployed. So they don't know if he hit something on the way down, if the cocaine was too heavy and it dragged him down too fast and he wasn't able to pull his parachute. But this is the same person, his freaking flight crew said that he used to wait till the very last minute to pull his parachute. So even then, that's something he was trained for. Maybe, he started to, no, because it would have been an autopsy report if they said he was doing drugs. So I'm not sure. I don't know what happened. But if you think the FBI was done, they were not. They were like, somebody has got to go down for all of this. Somebody has to go down for something with the company. So they close in on Henry. And when they close in on Henry, they double back to Bonnie because they're like, okay, it's been almost 5 years since you've been in prison, and maybe now you'll want to talk. Your tune might change. And it actually did. She said she only told the police what she told them because that was her way of dealing with what she did. That was her way of being able to forgive herself. But now after 5 years, she's forgiven herself, and now she thinks that Henry needs to, face some justice of his own. So in January of 1987, Bonnie stands trial again, and she tells them everything about everything Henry did and how he helped her and how he bought her the skies and he bought her the gun and all this. And she also tells them where she threw the gun after the murder. And they go straight to the gun and pick it up and get it out of the pond. Or it was the creek. It was a creek. On October 19th, 1987, Henry Vance is arrested. And when he's arrested, this is a long trial. And so many high top priority people wrote letters trying to get this man out of jail, basically stating it wasn't his fault. He was around the wrong crowd. And it's just so crazy. But after all of this, he was convicted of 15 years for conspiracy to murder. And when the judge was sentencing him, you actually can see it on YouTube. He is reading him like to the left, like basically, I wish I could get you for the other stuff, but I know you did this and I know you did that too. And all y'all was a bunch of criminals and you didn't have to be. You guys were born into privilege. You did not have to live like this. So we have Drew, who is dead. We have Bradley, who is in jail for 15 years. And we have Henry, who is also in jail for 15 years. Whew, the company. So the session is over. The joint is out. This one was a long one. And I tried to make it not so gruesome. But that means next week we might have to bring in the Top Guns. Oh, did anybody see Top Gun? I haven't. I didn't. But I heard it was really good. So, all right, let me know. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining the session. I do appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go because this was a long one. But you know what you got to do if you're a part of this True Gang family over here. You got to take at least 1 minute out the day to love yourself because life is way too short to wait on anybody else. You guys have a great evening.